Hey friends, it's Christy, and I'm thrilled to be back with this month's episode of Christy Gets Crafty with my favorite things. Today I'm going to be making a cute card using the brand new Bertie Brown Saddle Up and Celebrate. Love this set, so cute. To begin, I've stamped my images with black licorice hybrid ink on some Copic-friendly cardstock since I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers today. I'm starting with my little cowboy, and I'm using some skin tones that are a little bit darker than usual just because he would be out in the sun quite a bit and have a nice rich tan. So I'm using E51, E53, and E55. I started with that E55 and I gave him quite a dark shadow on his forehead, both because of his hair and that cowboy hat would really be casting a shadow on his face. And then I'm blending down with the E53 and using the E51 for a highlight. I'm also going to add in a little bit of rosiness to his cheeks with the R20 and then just color around the edge of that with that E51 to soften it into the rest of his skin. For his hair, I'm using E55, E57, and E59. There's not a whole lot of it showing, but I do want to have some highlights and some lowlights and, give it a little bit of life. So I colored that in solid with the E55, and I'm using the E57 and the E59 to add some flicks of color in there, just a little bit here and there, using the very tip of my marker and trying to get as skinny little flicks as I can. While I have those colors out, I'm also going to color in the wagon wheel using just the E57 and E59, and then I'll use all three shades to color in his leather chaps. So the way these are drawn, you could certainly color them one shade and have them be regular pants, but I thought it would be fun to give him chaps. Chaps were traditionally worn by cowboys to protect them from the elements, from thorny bushes like sagebrush and cacti, and also just to be an added layer of protection against the elements since they were out in all kinds of weather. So I thought it would be fun to kind of do that and, go traditional. So I'm using the E59 around the outer edges and kind of under his vest and give it a little bit of shadow there. Also where there's a little bit of a fold in the fabric toward the bottom of his legs. And then blending towards the center with the E57 and using the E55 as the highlight. And I wanted his vest to match, so I'm going to do leather on the bottom half. So I'm shading with that E59 across the line and on the outer edges of his body, and then blending with that E57 and using the E55 for the highlight towards the inner bottom corner. My favorite combo for jeans is B93, B95, and B97. Sometimes I also like to throw in the B99, but I wanted his to be a little bit lighter color since they'd be kind of worn, weathered. So I'm starting with that B97, doing that very thin strip on the back of his legs, and then also his pocket and the front of his jeans, and then blending with the B95, and then the little bit of B93. And then the top half of his vest I wanted to also match so that it will also be jean material. And for that I just used the B97 and the B93. There was really just room for the two shades. For his shirt, I'm using E40, E41, and E43. I'm actually starting with the E41, which is my mid-tone, and then blending with the E40 because I didn't want the shirt to get too dark. And then once that was done, I came back in with the E43 in just a couple little places, very sparingly, to add a little bit more depth and dimension to that, and then blended once again with that E41. I'm using the same three shades for his hat, but this time I am starting with that E43 because I want it to be just a little bit darker. So I'm doing the shadows behind his head and across the front of his hat where the brim is still curved down. And then up on the crown of his hat there would also be a shadow cast by the two sides that are folded upward. It would be a little deeper on the right side since his head is tilted to the left. And then I just want to accentuate that little divot in the very crown of his hat where it's been creased. I blended everything nice and smooth with that E40 and E41, and I felt like the E43 got knocked back just a little too much, so I came back in with a second layer of that and blended out with the E41. I used the same 3 shades to color in the base of the balloon to make it almost look like a cowhide. I'm using some warm grays to give him some faded black cowboy boots and also color in his belt buckle and the center of the wagon wheel. I used W7 as the darkest tone and then blended out with the W5 and used the W3 as my highlight. And I'll color the spots on my balloon with those same 3 shades. All that's left to color is the bandana, and I wanted to use that to add a really nice pop of color to the card. I decided to go with red, so I'm using R29, R39, and R59. I'm using the R59 to really accentuate those shadows, especially in the places where the fabric is gathered, and then blending with the R39 and using the R29 as the highlight, which is a really nice bold red that's going to make a really nice statement on the card. And then I also just colored in the little center of the button of his chaps. And now I'll trim these out with the matching dies. I wanted to do a scenic background, so I'm starting out with the cloud stencil and some spun sugar and carved pumpkin distress inks. I'm going to keep turning that stencil and adding layers of the pink and then the orange until I have a really pretty but soft and subtle sunset sky. The great thing about this cloud stencil is that you get 4 different cloud designs, 1 on each edge, and then you could actually flip the stencil over and get 4 more in the reverse. So you could actually come up with 8 different cloud designs if you wanted to do that, and it creates some really unique and beautiful backgrounds. Next, I'll be taking the Gathered Twigs Distress Ink and the Drifts and Hills stencil and creating a desert landscape. I wanted my back hill to be the darkest, and then as I turn the stencil, I'm going to get softer and softer with my hand so that it looks like there's different layers of hills there. And the paper I'm using is the Bristol Smooth Surface that has that vellum coating. The ink blends so beautifully on it. The last stencil I'm using is the brand new Grassy Edges, and I'll be using some Shabby Shutters Distress Ink and just holding that into place and blending that down across the bottom for a little bit more color. I'm going to set this panel aside to dry and work on the next element. I'm taking the Happy Birthday block die and cutting that out of some grout gray cardstock centered over on the right hand side of the panel. I popped out all of the letters and lined the back with some foam tape, and I'm going to adhere that down right over top of our sunset desert scene. For my sentiment, I'm stamping the Saddle Up and Celebrate on some more grout gray cardstock with a darker gray ink. And then while I have my MISTI out, I'm also going to stamp the inside of my card, and I'm taking the larger cactus and the sentiment that says looking sharp and stamping that down in the bottom left corner. I'll use some liquid glue to adhere my focal panel to my card front. And also to adhere my images, I'm sticking the wagon wheel so that it just slightly overlaps that B cutout so you can still perfectly read the sentiment. And then I'll have my cowboy leaning against the wheel there. The balloon I'm going to use to fill that space up at the top and tuck the string behind the cowboy's hat so that it looks like it's possibly tied to that wagon wheel. And then all that's left is to add my sentiment. I put foam tape behind the cutout letters and used liquid glue for the rest. As a finishing touch, I'm going to take some glossy accents and fill in the center of the wheel and the cowboy's belt buckle, and also coat the balloon completely so it'll be nice and shiny. And that is going to complete our card for today. There's another peek at the inside. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the July edition of Christy Gets Crafty with My Favorite Things. If you did, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. I love to read your feedback. Subscribe to My Favorite Things for more inspiring videos just like these here on screen. Bye-bye!